We have three global distinguished speakers. Mr. Salvador Castro Jr. from Philippines, Dr. Salwano Hadi from Indonesia, and Mr. Nicholas Gould from United Kingdom. The first speaker is Mr. Salvador Castro Jr. Are you ready?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
We go first. First slide. First slide. First slide 3. Can we click the first slide? Can we click the first slide, please?
This is second slide, right? It's content.
That is slide number 3.
Oh.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So are we going to restart?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me again. And we have a very interesting seminar, and that is on the dispute board and the avoidance of dispute. And we have a very good subject, which is prevention is better than cure. Very interesting because you prevent so that you don't have to cure anymore. And what we're going to present to you are series of barriers that we have encountered on the use of dispute board. We look at it and we try to look at whether there's an opportunity for anyone interested to become a dispute board, and with focusing on dispute avoidance. And then we went into the challenges. Are there any challenges that you have to look into? And we're going to present to you the Manila model. And my topic is divided into 6 topics. And let's go to slide number 2. In slide number 2, I have there 6 topics, which is the series of surveys conducted on the use of dispute board. The second is the opportunities that we look into. And then we went into the challenges. And with the challenges, we tried to come up with a 5-point action plan. And on the 4th item, we look at what have we done, which is a scorecards. What have we done as far as the action plans for the challenges are concerned? Then we went to the recommendation and eventually the summary. So let's start first with slide number 3. And in slide number 3, there are a series of surveys conducted since 2011. It was basically started in the Philippines by JBIC when it was organizing a project management program for global participations. And they conducted sort of a series of surveys among the participants coming from the various countries, which were actually being within there is a JBIC headquarters at the time. It went on, followed, and in 2017, there is another survey conducted by JICA. And the one that was conducted by JICA talks about the findings of all those barriers. I did this course from 2011 onward. I tried to take note of these barriers that we have. And in some cases, wherein I'm invited to speak for the FIDIC Asia Pacific Conference Users Conference, I tend to speak about the findings of the survey, not globally, but in Southeast Asia, focusing on the Philippines. And we have also the DRBF International Conference, which is usually done in Indonesia. As a matter of fact, very recent, I talk about these barriers. So what are these barriers that is happening here? And it's still ongoing, these barriers. You have the barrier number 1, which is the cost of international DB. Number 2, barrier number 2, the cost of trainings of locals for the national list of adjudicators. Number 3, enforceability of the DB decisions. Number 4, understanding of the DB and its benefits. And number 5, budget for the cost of the DB. Now, I would like to focus on 3. First is the barrier number 1, barrier number 5, and barrier number 2. So I would like to focus on those three because it is very significant as far as our action plan is concerned. So I would like to present to you in slide number 4 just a title, which is Opportunities, Manila Model. So in slide number 4, we have the opportunities. So what we did is we focused down to the Philippines. And what we did is in slide number 5, we have these projects, the Build Better More infrastructure programs of the Philippines under the Philippine Development Plan for 2017 to 2028. So it's a long-term plan, regardless of various presidency is concerned, because there was a master plan that was made. We are late, but we're moving. So if you look at infrastructure, the Philippines is way behind in Southeast Asia. And what we are doing is we're just trying to catch up. So it's really a massive infrastructure program that is being developed by the country to at least catch up. Not to be ahead, but just catch up. So what we did there is to look into what are these foreign funded projects that would require dispute board. So if you look at the slide number 6, I will show you that there are 154 foreign funded infrastructure projects in the Philippines from 2017 to 2028. And those are foreign funded projects would either be ODA, loan projects, PPP, public-private partnership, ODA, PPP, hybrid. So if you look at the total of that, you have 134 contract packages with 414 dispute boards to be appointed in these projects. So if you divide again, you have 276 standing 3-member dispute board and 138 standing dispute review board, which is basically recommendatory as far as PPP is concerned. So in summary, you have 414 standing dispute board required for year 2017 to 2028. Now, where are we getting those numbers? So what we did is we looked into the list of the president's list that we have. So if you go into slide 7, you will see there the map where the president's list of adjudicators are situated, where they are. And as of October 2024, based on the FIDIC website, we have 117. In 2021, Dr. Omoto-san reported in February of 2021 that there are 65, and there's a need to increase the number to 450. But we only hit 217 as of today. So the difference of that, or the increase of that, is 54 between 2021 and 2024. And 95% of those are coming from Europe, Latin America, Africa, Middle East, Australia, India, Japan, Sri Lanka. And that's far from the Philippines. 6 are coming from Southeast Asia. However, if you look very closely on that 6, there are 4 that are not citizens of Southeast Asia. You have 1 from Nepal, 1 from France, 1 from UK, and 1 from South Africa. So you really have 2 citizens of Southeast Asia. So we came up with our observation. What is our observation? Our observation is that the barrier number 1, which is high cost of international DB, remains the same because we high cost of long distance travel of the 99%, 95%, I'm sorry. And only maybe 2 are coming from the ASEAN, and it's not even enough to cover the requirement of the Philippines or in the ASEAN. The second is the barrier number 5, which is the budget for the cost of DB remains the same due to the high cost of standing 3-member DB from the president's list that are coming outside. So we believe that there's really an urgent need to train and appoint nationals from the Philippines or within the ASEAN as DB members to support the DB requirements of the infrastructure projects in the Philippines. We're only focusing Philippines. And they will act as the catalyst to the other DB members in the effective communications, cooperations, and in winning the trust of the parties, which I believe is a very important element in dispute avoidance. So our overall observation is that there's really an urgent need or urgent demand for a standing three-member DB. However, there is limited or no supply of cost-effective DB, and also there are a number that has no work experience in the Philippines. So it's a high demand, but limited supply. So it is something that we have to look into and we said to talk to ourselves and say, as Filipinos, what are we going to do? We do 3 or 4 things. Number one, we just allow the delays of projects without a dispute board appointed because of the cost. And they're unable to resolve the dispute avoidance. They cannot do the dispute avoidance. And let's wait until the number of precedence lists will go up to that number that will support our requirements. And the third is do nothing, just watch. So we decided to do something about it. And we Filipinos decided to come up with the 9 slides. What are the 9 slides? We look at it as the challenges, and we go into the challenges. We accepted challenges, and we went into the 5-point action plan in slide 9. So what are the action plan? We are guided by the scale. High demand of standing DB, low supply or limited supply of standing DB from the region. So we have 5 action plans. First, formal training and certification of qualified nationals and creation of the national list of trained adjudicator. Number 2, advocacy with infrastructure stakeholders on the appointment of trained nationals as DB members and encourage other nationals to formally train and become a DB member. Number 3, develop suggested criteria in the selection of the standing board with emphasis on the role of dispute avoidance. Dispute avoidance came now as a new thing that focuses and being developed with all the stakeholders. Number 4, develop suggested guidelines in the appointment of nationals as DB member. They don't just appoint anyone, but there are standards, there are guidelines that has to be followed. Number 5, which is the dream that we have, is develop tests and certifications of national Filipinos, list of approved adjudicators but to be conducted by an independent third party. Now, based on this, we have to look at the scorecards. What happened? Is there anything that happened? So I start first in slide 10, and I will tell you the first scorecard. In slide 10. Okay. So as of today, 35 out of 40 participants have successfully completed the exclusive in-house trainings of FIDI contracts, management of claims, special course on dispute board conducted by FIDIC Academy, and the DB training workshop on the roles and responsibility of DB conducted by DRBF. The 35 are respected professionals with extensive experience in construction industry in the Philippines and are member of the Philippine Institute of Construction Arbitrators and Mediators, or PICAM, who are trained and accredited arbitrators, mediators of the construction industry arbitration of the Philippines. As of today, 35 are now accepted as the PICAM list of trained adjudicators. They are not approved adjudicators, they are not certified adjudicators, but they are trained adjudicators. So that is what happened here. While we're doing that, we go into slide 11. We need an advocacy. The advocacy is to talk to the stakeholders, the need of dispute board, why they have to appoint a national as member of dispute board, and encourage others to be trained formally. So what we did, we have a visit with the PP Center of the Philippines. We visited the top leaders of the Department of Public Works and Highways. We visited the top leaders of the Department of Transportation. The two are the key players in the infrastructure project. And we visited also the head of PPP because right now the government is trying to shift or add from ODA loan projects to PPP projects. Then we went to the private sectors and we had a meeting with the Department of Trade and Industry, wherein that's the organization where you have the private sectors. So we tried to cover the stakeholders from the Philippines. And very recently, I was invited as a speaker in the National Federation of ASEAN and Western Pacific Contractors Association, and it's from Asian and Western Pacific. And I spoke about the need, if they have ODA projects or foreign funded projects, they need to have their nationals to be trained to become a dispute board. It can be a regional, it can be part of IFAUCA, but there must be a training if we have to follow an appointed dispute board and focus on dispute avoidance. So that is what we have done so far. And as of today, I am proud to say that 8 have been appointed as DBE members in government and private sectors, and we hope it will increase more as we do more advocacy and more convincing and informing all the stakeholders about the importance of engaging or appointing a local trained DB. So aside from that, what we did is to develop the suggested criteria in slide 12. And what you have aside suggested criteria on how the selections of the DB with emphasis on dispute board. So we have 3. First, we have the warranties, which is you normally see in your FIDI contracts, but you have to add soft skills and cultural competencies. And let me explain about each of this. So the first one is warranty in slide 13. So this is the warranties that we have in slide 13. And you have the slide 13, please. So you have the independence, impartiality, availability, experience and knowledge in works, the contract, experience in the interpretation of the contract documentation, fluent in language for communication. But we added 2 more. 1, extensive knowledge of FIDI contracts and how the clauses interact with each other, an understanding of the governing law of the contract. These 2 were basically explained in the FIDIC practice note 11, appointment of appointment of dispute board, and we added that because it's very effective. So we made that as part of the suggested criteria. Then we go into the next one, which is the soft skills in slide 14. In slide 14, we added the soft skills, interpersonal skills, social skills, communication skills, skills and experience in effective conduct of meetings and sessions, administrative and procedural skills, emotional intelligence, and possession of skills complementary to the other members. So I have made our own suggestions, and we also get the suggestions coming from the practice note 2, which is the appointment of dispute board. So we try to get what are the best that can be developed to come up with a good suggested criteria for our country. Then we go now into the third one, which is the cultural skills, and this can really be developed by the locals, and that is in slide 15. In slide 15, we have 4: knowledge and understanding of local laws and regulations, knowledge and understanding of local cultures, cultural sensitivities, cultural awareness, knowledge and understanding of cross-cultural communication, because there are a lot of cultures in a project, and D, knowledge and understanding of geopolitical and economic realities of the countries. These are the 2, we took it also from the practice note, but the 2 we added because we believe that these are the ingredient and requirement in this country. So these are the 3 that we submitted to the government, we submitted to the constructors, we submitted to the stakeholders for their consideration. And we don't get much resistance. It is basically approved in principle, but it is not yet adopted, but it is going to be, with a little bit of effort, it might be adopted as one of the criteria. So the 4th that we did is, then we have to go into the development suggested guidance in slide 16. So what we did is we submitted to the stakeholders a guideline in the appointment of nationals. Number one, nominate and appoint at least one qualified national as DB member whose key task, aside from his or her experience, is to provide the soft skills, the local cultures, the local laws to the other foreign DB members, especially to the parties. And the national DB, as I said, shall serve as the catalyst of the DB members in establishing effective communication, coordination, and winning the trust of the parties. There must be an entry training level. So the minimum training entry level, the nominated national, aside from his technical competence, as warranted, he or she must have successfully completed formal training on FIDIC contract conducted by FIDIC Academy with certification from FIDIC Academy, and DB workshop on roles and responsibilities of DB conducted by certified trainers of FIDIC Academy and DRBF. In addition, because of the soft skills that is needed to the minimum training, we recommended also to give additional consideration to those that have completed mediation training and experience in mediation, since mediation soft skills are necessary skills in attributes in the dispute. But on the third, on slide 17, we said and recommended that the standing three-member DB shall be composed of at least one national. As DB members, the chairman shall be from the FIDIC president's list of adjudicators who will provide experience, who will provide leadership, and who will provide the mentoring to the DB members, while the third DB members may be another national or national from ASEAN member country or foreign DB, depending on the complexity and the specific requirements of the project. So these are the three that we submitted, and we would like to summarize in slide 19. No, I'm sorry, I forgot there's another slide that I missed. The other one is we're exploring, the possibility of DRBF conducting a test to the PCAM trained adjudicators and submit a recommendation for the successful trained adjudicators to be accepted as a PCAM approved list of adjudicators. This will now become the national list of approved adjudicators of the Philippines. And this is something that we're hoping and working, and to make sure that we have to realize that that effort. And I'd like to summarize my next slide, which is there are three players. You have the employer, you have the contractor, you have the standing three-member DB. You cross hands and you need trust. There must be trust. The parties must trust the DB, and the three-member DB must trust each other. So there's really trust among the members. And I would like to repeat again that the national list, the national DB members, shall serve as the catalyst of the DB members in establishing effective communications, coordination, and in winning the trust of the parties. And I submit my recommendation in slide 20. And my recommendation is that a JICA to encourage or soft sell, not to appoint, just encourage the government and the contractors of ODA loan projects to appoint a qualified national as DBA members. FIDIC and DRBF to review and offer most cost-effective trainings for additional PCAM members to become future PCAM list of trained adjudicators, and the support of JICA is very much appreciated. The last one is that DRBF to review and offer most effective test evaluations and to recommend successful trained adjudicators to become accepted as PCAM approved adjudicators. As always, the support of JICA is very much appreciated. And with that, I think I will have to thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Salvador. Okay. Our next speaker, a second speaker is Dr. Sarwono Harudijomujari. Are you okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Okay, I will present by myself. Could you see the picture, my presentation, please?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, I'll start directly with the presentation. This is titling the Dispute Board Avoidance and Adjudication Board, appointing the dispute board with ethical consideration in dispute board practice. Let's start with this is just my CV. It's not so important. You can read it, gentlemen. And then this is the result of our experiences in Indonesia and Southeast Asia, that for the dispute boards to be effective, board members should, there is three very important practice. First is practice flexibility when managing the process. So you should not too strict, because we should encourage the people to use the avoidance function of dispute board. Number two, try to create a relaxed atmosphere. And number three, encourage communication. This is very important. The parties should be encouraged to tap to the dispute board, but more important, the parties encouraged also to talk each other, because they stay outside. It is easier for them to make good communication outside. Oops. Oops. Sorry. Yeah. We should understand also that the primary objective of the dispute board in construction project is to help the parties to find solution. So I underline the solutions, to help them settle their differences or disputes without resorting to time-consuming, costly, and potentially damaging arbitration or litigation processes. If used effectively, the dispute board provides an ideal opportunity for the parties to find amicable solution. This is the most important thing. And then dispute board members have a duty to manage the process to maximum effect. It is very clear. And the most important thing is the parties should be proactive in working with dispute board to find solution to their problems. So the parties should not only silent, but they should give also information, whether asking or informing or sharing to the dispute board member. Okay. This is about ethics, because ethics is the most important things. Ethics refer to a set of moral principles and professional standards. You can see ethics ensure the fairness, integrity, and credibility. This is very important. And then where we can find the standards, the standards can be found under general condition of dispute board and procedure rule in FIDIC condition of contract, or from canon rules under DRBF Code of Ethical Conduct. This is very important. DRBF canon number 1, I underline this one because this is a very, very important in my opinion, that board members must avoid the appearance of or any actual or perceived conflict of interest during the terms of the dispute board. And this is by the red color. Board members must disclose before their appointment any interest, past or present relationship or association that could reasonably be considered by a contracted party as likely to affect the member independence or impartiality. Yeah, you can see from the picture there. The most important thing is you can see the common source relationship with the parties, financial or business interest, bias due to the personal or professional affiliation.
Oh, Mr. Sarono, your mic is become mute. We cannot listen you.
Sorry, making you inconvenience. The dispute board to be impartial from the employer, the contractor, or the engineer. This is very important. It is to ensure that the DAB informal opinions or decisions are unbiased and based solely on the fact and terms of contract. We can see this is from FIDIC MDB Procedural Rule 5. The DB shall act fairly and impartially as between the employer and the contractor, giving each of them reasonable opportunity or putting his case and responding to the other's case during the hearing. And then FIDIC MDB Harmonized Edition Subclause 20.4, it's very clear that the DB shall be deemed to not acting as arbitrator. So the DB should not become an arbitrator or a judge. DB hearing and then make decision before that, encouraging the parties to reach agreement by informal opinion. This is one common example. The DB cannot do private communication with other party, not allowed, unless it is agreed during said visit or meetings by the chairman of the DB to do so. And primarily, this one-party communication due to the language barrier. For example, if we are from the country of the employer side, and then the employer have problem with the language, so usually the DB will make discussion among the DB, and DB will assign one of the DB member to make communication with the party. And this is because we always based on the trust and respect. So the DB member usually trust each other. This is very important. General obligation of the DB member, there is many, but I just put in the red color. B, not give advice to the employer, the contractor, the employer personnel, or the contractor's personnel concerning the conduct of the contract, except as required to carry out the DAB activities. And number E, be available to give informal assistance when requested jointly by the parties. This is the most important notes. Requested jointly by the parties. This is about the neutrality. Sorry. Neutrality ensure that dispute board members are impartial and not influenced by personal, professional, or national affiliation. The importance of neutrality in DBR was building trust, 2, promoting fair outcomes, and number 3, mitigating power imbalance. This is nationality and neutrality. In international project, the nationality of dispute board member can impact perception of fairness, impartiality, and bias. We can see here benefits of international composition. We can see usually the diverse perspective lead to well-rounded decisions, and then reduce perceived bias. It reduces perceived bias, but by balancing with the national representation, some parties may prefer representation from their home country for familiarity with legal and cultural norms. And then best practices is one member from each party countries and a neutral chairperson from the third country. We are practicing this one in Indonesia. This is both cultural and legal differences. Both members from different legal systems may interpret contractual terms differently. Cultural misunderstanding and hamper the avoidance function of the AB. Language barrier, also use of common language, often English is essential for clear communication. And then also risk of misinterpretation. Why ethics important? This is the very important question. Why ethics important? Ethical practices are critical for several reasons. First, preserving trust. Number two, ensuring justice and maintaining credibility. We can see from JICA manual, Appendix 5.2, the key to a successful DB is that DB members obtain respect from the parties. In this consideration, it is a common practice that each of the parties nominates a respectful candidate for a DB member from the same nationality whom they think as competent and reliable. We can see this one. Yeah, this is reasonable practice as far as the other party approved, as far as approved by the parties. And in this case, the chairperson must be someone from different nationalities of the parties and the engineer. This is how to appoint. This is stated already by Salvador, but we can see from FIDIC 2017, reprinted 2022, 3 point. When appointing the DAB member, each party relies on the DAB member representation that he or she is, one, experienced and knowledgeable in the type of works. Number two, experienced in the interpretation of construction and or engineering contract documentation, and fluent in language for communication stated in the contract data. And then when the DAB member have been appointed, a formal written agreement must be made among the employer, contractor, and each individual DB member. This is often called a three-parties agreement. It is very important because with this agreement signed by three parties, it means that both parties agree for appointing this member of dispute board. Okay. You still can follow my explanation, gentlemen? Putus lagi. Hello?
Yes, I can
Okay.
with you.
Okay. Yeah. Contractor have more advanced training. This is what is actually happened at site. The contractor have more advanced training regarding either contract nor dispute resolution. But if we give training to the contractor only, in the end, the implementation of the AB comes to the hand of the employer. And most of the employer not understand the importance of the AB. Even if they understand, they don't know how to initiate one. JICA already conduct some event in the form of training and workshop. Before in 2012, JICA conducted a training in the Philippines in the ADB head office for 50 participants from non-Japanese country, but also 50 from Japan, and put only 10 pass the examination. And then now not anymore action like that, because before that is, I think that is the only training given to the employer from JICA. But recently, some lender of ADB, as ADB, Kiat, this is Australian aid, already conduct a training for the employer and also inviting national auditor that may have contribution to their project. This is in Asia, Southeast Asia, and in China, there is a national auditor supervising the project. In this year, we have I have given the training to the Timor-Leste government officials and the national auditor of Timor-Leste, giving training on FIDIC contract, module 1, 2, 3, and then module 4. This is and then finally, the national auditor can understand the importance of DAB. And this is very important. So I suggest JICA to conduct another training like this in the countries. This is a history of dispute resolution in Indonesia before the law number 2, 2017. We can see this is quite complicated. The parties, there is an employer and contractor, and the employer assisted by the engineer who will issue the variations. But most of the employer in Asian country appoint another consultants to work as in-house consultants for giving advice to the employer. Yeah, you can see this one. And also employer head office will conduct a very strict supervision to the site project. You can see this one. Also another police and another group of corruption eradication committee on national will come to the site also to check. And also the prosecutor come to the site, including and also auditor. So too many we can see, maybe 9 or 10 institutions involved in the project to check when the parties and the contract, the employer and contractor agree, but they still come to check, and they will give maybe their different opinion on this case, and this create a problem. We have already at that time the dispute adjudication board. We can see this is a success story in Indonesia in a Patimban Harbor project where I involved. The employer invite me as a dispute board member, and then the contractors proposed Toshiko, the Japanese, as a dispute board member, and both of us proposed James from Canada as a chair. And this is successfully done. And we also involve BPKP. BPKP is the national auditor in this case. We invite them in the DAB meeting and we explain the importance of avoidance. Avoidance is very, very important. This is in our cultures, avoidance is always the first choice. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. Excellent speeches. Question and answer and debates will follow in the next stage. Thank you again. Nicholas, would you start your term?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what happened there.
Okay,
dear.
please go ahead. Yeah.
So he's on hold? I don't know what that means. Okay.
Most
All
probably
right.
someone called Salvador and he picked up the phone, so it will be a problem. So please go
Okay.
ahead.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully. Okay. So hopefully now you can see the introductory screen. It just says prevention is better than cure. Can you see it? Because unfortunately with my
Yes, it's clear.
Is it good?
Clear
Because it
to
doesn't
me.
come up on my screen. I don't know why. Okay, that's good. All right. So interesting. It's not moving. Okay. There we go. All right. Thank you very much. So introduction then. I'm going to look at three things. The dispute avoidance mechanisms of FIDIC in relation to dispute boards, and then focus on a couple of examples. So that is Caltran in the US, their use of dispute board, and then Thurn. Okay, so each, in relation to the 2017 FIDIC and the DAAB avoidance mechanism, each party shall advise the other in advance of any known or probable future events or circumstances. So this is new or revised clause 8.4. Sorry. So when FIDIC moved from 1999 to the 2017 edition, they tried to put more emphasis on the avoidance mechanisms, and so they added these additional words here. Then earlier on in the FIDIC contract at General Condition 3.8, they've added this provision about attending management meetings to discuss arrangements for future work and so on. So what they've been trying to do is encourage the parties to work together more, and also to think about future problems that are coming up in their contract. So that has to be then the parties that are trying to think forward and not just rely on external resources to do this. But then when you get to the dispute resolution clause, I suppose it follows that the parties may then jointly request the DAAB to provide assistance or informal discussions and attempt to resolve issues or disagreements. I've underlined jointly because lots of people think this is unfortunate. In other words, if the parties don't jointly request it, then the DAB can't seem to do very much. I personally don't think it's a problem, because if you go to a site meeting where one party wants the DAAB to look at a particular problem or suggest what might happen or consider the contract with them, then it's possible, I think, for the DAB to simply get involved and start to look at that by bringing the other party in. So if one party wants this and the other party is not sure, usually by discussions with both parties, you get them to engage in the problem. So I don't find this too much of a problem, this jointly request. If, however, you're wanting an informal written decision, which I suppose is possible, then you certainly, I think, need to have written confirmation from both parties, mainly because you need them, I think, to identify the question or questions that the DAAB should be looking at. But the DAB can help, I think, with that. So again, it might be that the DAAB in the meeting writes down the questions, everybody discusses them, and then it's agreed. But I do think that the DAAB has to be slightly careful about how proactive they are in pushing informal discussions if one party just doesn't want to do it. Anyway, it all seems to me that if one party doesn't want this to happen, that it won't be effective anyway. You need the parties to both go with you on this review and on these discussions. And the DAAB can, in any event, at any meeting or site visit or otherwise, raise this with the parties. It could be done on the telephone or face to face. So face to face on site. I suppose video conference is the next most common way that I've done this, and it does tend to work fairly well, I think. Before this, way before this, Caltrans had already made real movements in this area. So going back 20 years, Caltrans is the Californian Transport Authority in the States. And they introduced a dispute review board. So DRBs don't make binding decisions anyway. They make recommendations which the parties can adopt. And also a DRA, dispute review advisor. So this again was a one person, and the DRB is 3 people. And they introduced this on their projects a long time ago. It's certainly 20 years ago. And they liked it. So the owner introduced it, they liked the process, so they've stuck with it and kept it and formalized it. What happened was that they found themselves in lots of litigation on all of their construction projects, which were the transport projects, rail and so on. And they were trying to find a way to resolve things more quickly. So they introduced dispute boards. And what they said is that they would listen to the DRB, and if a recommendation was made, they would follow that recommendation. So even if they didn't like it, they would still go with it if the recommendation was made. So if they ended up with a dispute board making a recommendation that they should pay a contractor an amount of money, they would pay it, and they wouldn't dispute it again. And after doing this for a while, they adopted the position that they would have them on all projects, and that they would always follow the recommendation. They'd still be non-binding, but they would follow it, and they expected their contractors to follow it also. And this worked very successfully, so contractors accepted the situation. For those contractors that didn't, that went on to bring litigation, they just didn't use them again. Their goal was not to have any further litigation. And it took them 5 or 6 years, but they pretty much achieved this. As a result, they're much more efficient. They don't have management time tied up in litigation afterwards. They get better prices when tendering from contractors because the contractors know they will be treated fairly by an independent dispute board and that Caltrans will pay and stand by it. So it really improved their whole business and their whole efficiency. And so they formalized the process, and to this day, they still do it. And this is the process that they use. So the contractor and the authority appoint a person each, and then they select a chair. All communications go through that chair to the parties because it's about avoidance, this process. It's not about adjudication. Monthly project updates are provided to the panel. Site visits are not more than every 3 months. So there will be 4 or more site visits. It's important to have constant communication and good site visits. There were formal regular meetings and also informal meetings to discuss problems. So if a problem is presented, then they may have some further meetings and discussions. And then the DRB or the DRA has 30 days to make a written recommendation. And then the parties can say if they don't like that recommendation, they can say within 30 days. Otherwise, that resolves the matter. And no response leads to a deeming acceptance of the DB's recommendation. So for 30 days, you can dispute it, otherwise it becomes final. And that's the current process that they're now using. Then we have the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland and France. So CERN, the nuclear research facility, their head office is in Switzerland, in Geneva, but the actual project itself, the Hadron Collider is an underground 27-kilometer tunnel, goes under France. So it's partly under Switzerland, you can see on the diagram, and mostly under France. So you have a project that's in 2 jurisdictions. And they wanted to extend this project 10 years ago. And the project, in fact, started 8 years ago and is now finished. It's been concluded for just about a year. And there are 2 access points, Atlas in Switzerland and CMS France is the other entry point. And what they wanted to do is expand the facilities underground. So in this diagram, you can see the 2 or the red areas where they were building and expanding underground, the caverns, the shafts, so they could get larger research equipment underground in order to expand the research work that they were doing. And once the caverns were built, they were putting in huge magnets and cryogenic cooling systems so that they can experiment on protons to see what matter is made of. Have a look at their website if you're interested. But the project was €1 billion, spread over 7 years because it needed to be done whilst the facility was working, so during shutdown periods and so on. And they decided to have a panel of adjudicators there. And this was FIDIC based again. FIDIC Red Book, because they wanted to have quite a bit of control on design. They adapted the FIDIC contracts to include specific elements for underground works and also to deal with CERN's unique features. In addition to that, they had a panel of 5 adjudicators. So they wanted to have a range of skills on their project. So they'd learned in the past that it's helpful to have a wider range of skills. It wasn't just about having adjudicators that might come along and look at the project. They wanted to have 2 engineers, an architect, a lawyer, and then a chairperson. And I was the chairperson for that project. I'm dual qualified. So they had quite a range of skills. And what happened was that the adjudicators were on 4 contracts. So 2 contracts in France and 2 contracts in Switzerland with different legal rules in relation to mandatory issues like planning and building regulations and health and safety, all just slightly different. But the substantive law of the contract was not fixed in France or in Switzerland. So it was generally acceptable international principles. So they took away a system of law from the contract. It was about logic and general principles. So that was an interesting issue to deal with, but it didn't actually cause any problems. So the factors for success on that project, I think, were just having an initial project meeting at the very outset. So when the project began, right at the beginning, all the parties came together and for several days, and there were presentations about the project and what people wanted to get from the project. And even the dispute board gave a presentation about how it works. So I led that and the team joined in. This meant that we were all clear about what we were trying to achieve, what the target of the project was, what our goal was in trying to help. And then we had regular site visits every 4 months. So we spent 2 days there, going underground, looking at the site, having presentations, and then discussing variations that were not agreed or any delays, the ground investigation reports, issues with contaminated land that came up, and changes of design or clashes in design, all these sorts of things that came up that happen on these larger projects. So we basically tried to help the parties focus on their understanding of the issues, what the contract said, how to apply it, what facts they had about a particular problem, what uncertainties they had. So whilst one party may think they're right, they normally didn't have all the information. So you'd look at possible outcomes in a particular scenario. So what a variation may look like and its impact on the work and time, whether it was critical or not, how they managed it, what the resources were. And so by discussing all of this, it became more clear to the parties if there was really a delay or not, and how much time and what it cost. And through discussion, this resolved just about everything during the 7 years across 4 contracts. The parties would realise that the issue would be kind of settled here, or it was sensible to settle it in this way. And usually the engineer would change their recommendation. CERN would be happy with that because they were very involved and wanted to get things resolved. And then the contractor would accept that position because they realised how it would turn out if it came to us. We did give some informal opinions. So there were some areas where they couldn't quite agree, but we would help with informal opinions about process, how we think the contract worked and what you might need to prove. Decisions could be given if required, so we were able to issue decisions. Now, there were 5 of us, and if a decision were required, then I would select 3 of us as a normal 3-person dispute board to deal with it. You wouldn't need all 5 of us working on a decision. In fact, I think it was possible for me to select 1 person as well, I suppose for a simple matter, but I wasn't keen to. I'd rather have had 3. For informal opinions, we did use just 3 of us to write those down when they came along, but we never issued any decisions. There were no formal referrals. So I personally think that this was a very successful project. And I've seen a lot of dispute boards where the parties have engaged dispute board members late in the project because they've got a dispute, the parties aren't really getting on. It's very difficult to get the parties to discuss anything usefully or sensibly. So I think if you're going to have avoidance with the use of dispute boards, you have to engage them at the start, appoint them at the start, because it's important for them to get to know the people and the project, and that's the only way that they have added value. But if you do that, then it's much more economic in the long run, because if you look at the costs of arbitration afterwards, it's just it costs a lot more than having a dispute board. And my experience have been with this project and also with some other projects where this has happened, that it can be very effective. But you need an owner that is willing, I think, to want to do this and actually understands that they will save money and that they will save time. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I'll stop sharing so that we can all see each other a bit more clearly. And then if you have any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them for you. Thank you.